Hello, I'm Chris Richmond, and today I'm off to Norwich to pay a personal tribute to a soon-to-be-demolished city landmark. Now, love it or loathe it, Anglia Square has been a hot topic of the city for a number of years now. With a number of ambitious schemes to redevelop the area amounting to nothing, the site was recently acquired by Norwich City Council with a bid to demolish. And finally, there appears to be some action as the few remaining businesses close their doors for the last time. For over 50 years, these blocky Brutalist buildings have dominated the North Norwich skyline. A stark contrast from the ancient houses, factories and local amenities which stood before. In the post-war promise of the late 1960s, this was the future. But since the turn of the 21st century, this place seems to have remained stuck in the past, and now it's about to disappear completely. For some, this might seem like great news. The decaying, dreary blockwork is certainly past its best, but it had a sense of purpose and served its community well until the very end. Before it's wiped out by the wrecking ball, I take one last look around this now empty shopping centre, capturing some of the memories of the people who lived and worked here during its heyday. First up, former cinema entrepreneur Trevor Wicks. Trevor ran the former Hollywood cinema, which overlooks the square. Right, Trevor, thanks for joining me. You ran this cinema here for how many years?
19 years, from 2000 up to 2019.
And how did your cinema career begin?
Well, I had an interest in cinema for many years, and in fact, the first time I came to Anglia Square was to see the Roger Moore film Gold in 1974. And at the time, it had only been open a few years, but it was an entertainment and shopping complex well ahead of its time. Little did I know that many years later I would be operating and taking over the old Odeon. I remember as a school child doing a project when I was in Swaffham on the history of the cinemas, and visiting the Odeon here and saw the old manager, Derek Williams, and went in his office, and I was so blown away with the place. Little did I know that I'd be in that same office running my empire years later. I started Hollywood Cinemas in Lowestoft in 1989. And we then acquired 3 cinemas in Great Yarmouth, the Royal to the Empire and the Windmill. Then we took over the Dareham Cinema, then the Fakenham Cinema. Now I had a connection with Anglia Square in the mid-90s while I was running my cinemas with Dino's Children's Adventure Playground just behind us. So I knew the square, and I was here for 8 years. And the manager, Roy Ruggles, who was here at the time, he obviously remembered me, and he knew that I was operating a circuit of cinemas in East Anglia. And he approached me and said, would I like to take over the old Odeon? And I was just dumbfounded. It wasn't easy. A lot of people went to the UCI at the time and the View. Also Cinema City was here as well, but we had our own audience, family audience. Anglia Square is surrounded by a lot of chimney pots, as they say, a lot of families around here, so we aimed for the family market. And we had some fantastic highlights while it was here, particularly the world premiere of Alan Partridge's Alpha Papa.
Yes.
Amazing day, not only for us but the city. And we have a world record of Despicable Me 2, which ran for 46 weeks. And it was definitely a UK record, and we think it was also a world record. Those sort of things just adds to what you remember in that building. They were some good years.
An award-winning design in its day, the cinema replaced an older building just a few hundred yards away on Botolph Street.
They demolished that and built a brand new cinema in Anglia Square. I never went to it, but the pictures were absolutely amazing. Art Deco, 2,000-seater cinema, and it's a shame because that would have made a fantastic theatre. And whilst the old Odeon was demolished, the golden age of cinema was already starting to wane.
and despite its modern aesthetic, the new building was already outdated.
It was originally built with just over 1,000 seats, and at the time, immediately it was out of date because cinema admissions were slowly going down during the 60s. They were converting these screens to 3 or 4 or 5 screens, but that was just a single screen. So though that looked fantastic and magnificent as a business model, it was up against the ABC cinema in Prince of Wales Road, which had 4 screens. And everybody said that they couldn't convert this one because it was built on stilts, as you can see. But then suddenly out of the blue, Odeon announced that they could do it. And they split the front stalls area to 2 screens, 200 seats each, and the rear was screen 1 with 500 seats. So, and it was a good conversion. It wasn't easy to heat. None of these cinemas are easy to heat. In the winter time, you'd have these great big oil boilers buzzing away, rattling away, and it wasn't ideal because when they converted it, they kept the original ceilings. They didn't drop the ceilings, so the heat didn't hold. That was always a challenge. We put a stage in, put on live shows as well. So that was something extra we could do. Sad to close, but everybody has to move on.
The futuristic angular structure of the cinema is overshadowed by the mighty edifice of the former stationery office. The first building to be constructed in the ambitious Anglia Square project, this brutalist glass and concrete behemoth was purpose-built to accommodate Her Majesty's stationery office. Designed by architects Alan Cook Associates, Sovereign House boasted 3 wings protruding from a central tower, and featured stylish spiral staircases with its array of windows manufactured by local engineers Boulton & Paul of Norwich. Constructed in tandem with part of a scheme to move operations out of central London, many of HMSO's staff had to relocate from the big city to a new life in Norwich. One of these was former civil servant Reg Walker, who worked in Sovereign House when the moment the doors opened, right up until it closed, and still lives in Norwich today.
Thanks for joining me, Reg. It's been
pleasure, Chris.
A long time, 12 years since we had our visit into Sovereign House.
Certainly is.
And you certainly wouldn't get in there now. So going back to the very beginning,
yes.
You were relocated into this building from London.
That's right, yes.
So tell me about that experience.
Well, just in brief, I joined HMSO as a clerical officer in Waterloo in London in 1963, moved over to Atlantic House in Holborn in 1965, and they started telling us that they were going to relocate to somewhere else around the country. And I live with my parents in Tooting in South London, in a rented house, and I was just about the age of thinking about moving out. So they had the vote of where we should come, and the 3 places that we could have been moved to were Basingstoke, Swindon or Norwich. And we all visited various places. I came up to Norwich and had a look round, and I thought, this is a lovely place. Went home, told my mother, and she said, where's that? Somewhere up in Yorkshire, is it? And it was so unknown. And I moved up here and got a lovely 2-bedroom, centrally heated council flat up at the Heartsease. Unbelievable. My parents couldn't believe my luck. But that's the brief summary.
It must have been quite isolating, moving away from a bustling city out here to what is really out in the sticks in comparison.
It is, but strangely enough, when you do it, it suddenly makes you realise, if you lived in Tooting, which is South London, when I went home in the evening on the Underground, there was nobody that I worked with in the whole of Tooting. Now, I reckon population-wise, Tooting's about as big as Norwich. It's massive, loads of people. So I didn't see anybody from work, and all that was left were the remnants of my school friends. When I came up here, there were 20 people I knew lived in the Heartsease, let alone everywhere else. And after work, you could, if you wanted to, go in the pub with them. It was far more friendly because somebody would say, oh, come round on Saturday, we could go and watch the football or whatever. So it was much more sociable atmosphere than it had been in London.
So what was it like working in this amazing looking building, was it really as state-of-the-art and comfortable and modern as it would have first appeared?
Well, it's odd really that you didn't so much think about the surroundings, because lots of the buildings we had in London were old converted warehouses and things like that. Atlantic House was a proper building, but we came up here and that building had a very good canteen, a trolley service bringing you drinks a couple of times a day. They eventually opened a bar, which you couldn't believe these days, selling alcohol. You could play darts and pool, and the actual working conditions, we were in semi-open plan until you got to a certain grade, you had a room of your own. And it was a friendly atmosphere, and there were, I don't know, 500, 600, 700 people in the building there, and we did the 8:30 till 5 every day, and it was perfect. Nobody really complained, to my knowledge, about the accommodation. Some people claimed about them, I don't know, it was cold in the winter and so on, but people will always complain about that, so it was lovely.
When Sovereign House first opened, many HMSO staff settled in the area, bringing their families to Norfolk. My next guest is Norwich photographer and historian Nick Stone, whose father worked at Sovereign House for a number of years.
Thank you very much for joining me, Nick. So your father worked here at Sovereign House, and it's literally the reason how you ended up here in this part of the world. So tell me a bit more about him and what you remember.
Well, he spent 35 years in the RAF. I was a bit of a late arrival. And when he left in 1967, he got a job working for the stationery office in London, and the family moved to Norwich before him. He was commuting to, I think it was Kew, was the original offices. And then basically once it opened up fully, he moved to Norwich. And here we all are. As far as I can remember, he worked in the East Wing, so on I think the third floor, Reg said, because Reg, before the interview, knew him.
During a special group visit inside Sovereign House in 2013, Reg managed to locate the exact spot where Nick's father once worked.
I really have the feeling your father said it was in this room. Really? Yeah. Yeah.
That's strange.
I'm sure I would put him round about here, from my memory, this sort of area. Yeah. Mrs. Dole over there, Vince Fitzgibbon, Terry Dickey, faffing about, nice old soul. Granville Reid worked in here. He was the bookkeeper for a bit, and then Vince Fitzgibbon did it. And Chris Randall was the HEO, and he was in the little room opposite. That was a room. It wasn't always this long.
The wall here.
Yeah, that's it. Definitely, yeah, all that's been ripped out. That's why I'm slightly confused. But the room was about this size. That'd be it, 2 doors in it. That's it.
So it was here?
Yeah, in there. Sure he'd be there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's nice to do.
He retired in 1977. So he'd done 10 years for HMSO, 7 of which I suppose were based here. And then I've got friends that worked here as well since, right up to closure.
In the late 1990s, HMSO made a decision to close Sovereign House, with many remaining employees relocating to nearby St Crispin's House. Whilst Sovereign House has lied derelict ever since, St Crispin's was recently given a new lease of life and has been transformed into modern student accommodation.
They've done it very nicely. The young lady over there took me round a part of it, and they've certainly done well of it. We were over there for a few years, and that was a good building to work in as well. And they had a smallish canteen in there, and all the rest of it. It was just a continuation of here. No bother at all. It was a very nice place.
During the days of the stationery office, shopping at Anglia Square was quite different, with a range of shops including a supermarket, pharmacy, and even of furniture dealers. A stark contrast to the discount stores and charity shops here in recent years.
There wasn't anything else like it. There was no supermarkets on the edge of the city. There was no Castle Mall, no Chapelfield, so this was the place to come. In fact, the first large-scale supermarket was here with Sainsbury's.
Oddly, when I knew you were going to do this, I did dig out from the Kelly's Directory of 1973-74 the shops that were here. And in the corner there was Fine Fare. Now you don't hear of Fine Fare anymore. Next to Fine Fare was Boots the Chemist, which was there all the time until fairly recently. And then there was Pank's Rental, and then the Wimpy Bar on the corner there, and Sainsbury's there.
And the other thing I do remember is my mum using Sainsbury's, because we didn't have one in North Welsh, and we had an international or a Fine Fare, and Sainsbury's was, I think, slightly upmarket by the standards of the time. And she also had this view, or had this thing rather, where when you came to Norwich, that really meant Magdalen Street. Certainly in the 70s, it was, we'd come to the city and maybe go to the centre if there was a specific thing we wanted, like going to Langley's or something like that. Generally speaking, I seem to remember trawling along Magdalen Street quite a lot, and down St Augustine's.
Well, I was a bit late to the square, really. I mean, I knew of its existence, but my mum and dad always went up to the big city. As you know, this was referred to as the little city. I guess it was just not on our route. But in the 90s, I used to come here to go to the nightclub called Rick's Place.
I remember coming here in the late 70s in the disco age, Cromwell's, Penny's, and also Rick's Place. And apparently there was a beer cellar of some sort here as well, which was very popular.
And there was a wine shop, Wineways, a paper shop. If you were, as I was, single, and you didn't particularly devote your life to shopping, in a lunchtime you could come down here and buy every last thing you wanted. Down the road was the Midland Bank I belonged to, there was Lloyd's or others, and everything, literally everything you wanted to buy, you could get from here. I worked with a fellow, I remember one day he booked a holiday, had a suit measured, and still turned up in the bar for the last 20 minutes lunch. And it was so easy and so convenient.
How many people have worked here over the years? Incredible amount of people, and ran their businesses here as well.
I married my wife, and my wife was more from around this area. I mean, her nan and granddad lived here. They came up to Norwich from London about the same time as the Sovereign House employees. She used to work in Kerrison Toys, which used to be over there. And that was when I met her. So after that, I used to come here to go club. But it wasn't until I started delving into the history of it that I really started to appreciate the place for what it was, you know.
Social historian Stu runs an online blog called The Mile Cross Man and was involved in a large-scale community project here at Anglia Square.
Yeah, there was a project a few years ago called Anglia Square, a love story, set up by the Common Lot here, a local theatre group who like to create free theatre for the residents of Norwich and get the residents of Norwich involved in, you know, making the theatre and producing the theatre. And I was involved in the historical side, obviously because I'm fascinated in history of Norwich and my past, and Anglia Square. I've written about it quite a lot in the past.
So what makes this place so special? To find out, we have to delve deep into the past and discover what was actually here before the Anglia Square complex was constructed.
This part of Norwich has been the working hub of Norwich since Proto-Norwich started. I mean, this is where the first settlers came up the river and they started the original Norwich right about here. I mean, we had defences ditches running through behind us, and we had St Botolph's Church a bit later.
St Botolph's Church is quite often associated with gateways, so we can assume there was some kind of gate here, possibly built out of wood. And we sat on Magdalen Street inside what's now the city perimeter. So we're talking about an old English, Anglian, Saxon settlement that was this side of the river, which was the Northwick.
It's easy to see where our fine city gets its name. But with the castle and cathedral constructed on the south side of the river, this area later became known as Norwich over the water. In medieval times, behind the main street frontages was a mixture of open ground and yards, which were gradually filled in during the course of the 18th century.
What you had here was a series of courts.
Cobbled streets, small businesses, homes.
For some reason, there was quite a lot of public houses on Botolph Street. And that led through to Stump Cross, just over there.
It's been the industrial working heart of the city until the post-war regeneration started.
We are probably sitting on the edge of Botolph Street, as was, with the church just behind us, which disappeared in the 16th century.
The area was badly bombed during the Second World War, and the beginnings of a bold regeneration plan were already starting to become realised in 1945. But it wasn't until the late 1960s that construction work began, with Sovereign House first on the scene in 1968, followed by the shopping centre we see today. 4 years later, the flyover across Magdalen Street was also constructed, completely changing the way traffic moves across this part of the city, as the concept of the inner ring road was adopted. But much like the Anglia Square development, was never finished.
I don't know how they managed to get hold of a part of the city, but I'm guessing they must have bought it off the council, and then they swept away all the businesses and replaced it with what you can see here now. Obviously it looks a lot better then. It was 1960s, 1970s vision of the future.
I know that there were supposed to be buildings on the second storey which have their footprints but don't exist. So it was going to be a double-decker, and it isn't.
I mean, there were some units that went upstairs, but that second level was never completed, as the HMSO was never fully completed either. That was meant to have another wing on it. So that said, it still brought thousands of jobs to Norwich, so it was still a success for its time.
The existing road that runs down the side of Sovereign House was already there. That was never removed, and there was a further road a little bit further along.
Almost 20 years after it was first opened, there were plans to revamp the square, but these were quashed by high interest rates, resulting in only a few minor changes.
I think it was in the 80s, there was a plan to regenerate it. The plan was apparently, I believe anyway, to build a two-storey orangery with restaurants and stuff like that, and finish the top storey off, which never happened. They cut the budget right down, and we got a cupola and they painted it, and I think that was probably where it really started to go wrong.
The 90s came and it was quite bright down here, and then 2000s came along and it slowly started to dwindle. I think the creation of the Castle Quarter, or the Castle Moor was known then Chapelfield, which really kind of finally finished off large shopping centres.
It's about how we shop. Obviously our supermarkets have moved away and moved to the outskirts, and people become more reliant on cars, so our supermarkets are further away.
I did read a stat somewhere up until fairly recently that per square foot, this is one of the busiest shopping centres in Norwich.
The cafe on the corner was very popular, as was Greg's.
I used to come here to go to the charity shops, which I like, looking through the books and everything, and I still found it a very good place to come.
I was a bit snobbish about it, which is a bit weird really, because I'm a working class lad from NR3, so I was kind of turning my nose up at myself really.
In its autumn years, the Anglia Square complex had become run down and dated as the Castle Mall and later Chapelfield became the city's shopping hotspots. With businesses pulling out, the area became a target for illegal graffiti, with tags and murals littering the lower levels of Sovereign House and the surrounding area. The mid-2000s saw the first public consultation suggesting that Anglia Square should be completely redeveloped, starting an 18-year planning saga which saw the area reimagined by a number of private developers, one of which proposed the construction of a 20-storey tower. But whilst none of these plans came to fruition, by the end of 2024, the whole site was purchased by Norwich City Council thanks to a grant from Homes England, allowing them to press ahead with a long overdue regeneration. With demolition now imminent, what do my guests think of the plans? Will they miss Anglia Square?
Yeah, I mean, I love the place. Well, I'm going to miss the place, that's for sure.
I have mixed feelings.
I'll be devastated to see the cinema disappear.
When you get to my age, you've got lovely memories of human beings and people that you knew doing things. I'm just sad that the government, and I know they didn't own the building, but they sort of disowned it, so it was allowed to linger. and become an irritation to the people who lived around here.
It's suffering a slow, painful death, and that's what was happening. Something had to change. It couldn't carry on like this.
If, when they decided to get rid of us, they'd done something with it, it could all have been used for something. I mean, even the car park. There's people parking over every bit of street in Norwich. A 10-minute walk away, they could be in that lot, but no.
You know, it's fallen apart. It's got the concrete rot, the steel reinforcement is coming out of all the concrete. If you look around, you can see where it's got cracks in it. And you and I, we went in Sovereign House, didn't we, a few years ago, which suffers the same issues. I mean, 12 years ago, that was in a real bad state. So I can't imagine how bad it is in there now. And that problem is present all throughout the architecture in the square.
Stu feels the same as me. We appreciate its ruin, and that there's limited use in it as it stands, but it just bothers me that removing something which people actually round here like and replacing it with something either faceless or tasteless or pointless.
So yes, it's been a sad time seeing everything closed down like this. But things move on, and it's past its sell-by date because of the new developments within the city as well. So let's hope whatever replaces it is something just as special.
I like brutalism, a lot of people don't.
The key thing here is how they redevelop it. And that's why I'm kind of glad that the council have got it and it's not gone to a private developer. Although the council aren't they're not being too clear about what they're going to build here. They say affordable housing, they're not telling us how much that is going to be council housing, if any, and that's what this area needs. It needs council housing.
Local houses for local people.
Yeah, exactly. The affordable housing is a bit of a lie.
I think it would be better if what they had planned was scaled back and more of it was turned into thoughtful housing like the development on Durham Road. You know, it's eco-friendly, affordable, there's not tons of it, it's not rammed into tiny little blocks, and have some presence of shops and a supermarket, but also have a park, I don't know, a doctor's surgery.
Yeah, it does need local housing for local people, they want the sound, you know. A bit cliched.
Yeah.
There is that danger that we're going to end up with just another street full of, modern built, identikit houses and flats, which, provide somewhere for people to live, but again, will that be affordable? There was the artist studio behind us in Guildgate. There's probably not going to be much to support that kind of community, which is quite important. St Augustine's in this area is the creative quarter. Increasingly not, because I think it was something like 100 artists suddenly found they had to go and find a studio somewhere else, and they've been in there for 15 years.
I mean, it's NR3, it's a poor area. They tried to gentrify it in the 70s, as you can see. Never fully worked. You're never going to gentrify this part of Norwich. It's a work-class heart.
But there are still people coming down here. Yeah. And where are those people going to go until it's redeveloped? And then when it's redeveloped, are those people going to want to come back here?
Just the number of people that meet here and go for coffee somewhere else, or it's just, I'll meet you at Anglia Square is a thing.
I mean, even now we're sat here, the place is completely closed down, but there's still people using it, sat here, coming through here.
5 other people and a set of workmen.
This is the ghost of Bottle Street behind the cameras here, isn't it? And even when you sit and watch people, they still follow pretty much the footprint of the old Bottle Street, and it's weird. It's a natural migration route from Norwich into the Norwich North into the city centre.
Yeah. Yes.
I will miss looking at it because I think it's nice. I mean, the buildings, the car park, Sovereign, Guildgate, the Odeon.
One thing I'm not looking forward to, obviously, is the cinema being demolished. What I've done in the past, if there's a cinema that I've loved and cherished, I've just avoided the area. I can avoid Anglia Square, but what I probably can't avoid is that flyover. And every time I come over that flyover, you only have to look right. And it did have an Odeon sign on, and now it's got a Hollywood Cinema sign on. Once that goes, the skyline will completely change, as will all these old buildings. I mean, HMSO, quite frankly, it gets a lot of criticism, but I think it's a magnificent building, especially that stairwell. It really is. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but the cinema won a design award in the early 1970s. You're never going to see a cinema designed like that. Love it or hate it. The only problem is that not many people saw it like that, because you have to stand further away. When you're coming in and you're coming in from ground level, you don't see the actual front of it, you come underneath the canopy. But what a magnificent building.
And it's much maligned now, but back then it was seen as futuristic and people were excited by it.
We were looking at creating a future, not exactly hoverboards, but it was that kind of inspired way of developing things rather than this kind of settled seeming lack of any decent developments in city centres where you do get identikit shopping malls and everything looks the same. So I would like it to be inspirational, but I suspect it's not going to be terribly.
It's very easy to be annoyed about things you can't do anything about and do nothing about the things you can do something about. And there we are. But yeah, it's sad, but it was a good time of life and good memories is all we could say.
So what about my own personal memories of the square? Well, I can actually remember coming here as a child being dragged around the shops by mum and dad. As a kid, I didn't notice it being particularly run down or unpleasant, but in the mid-2000s I revisited as a teen with my then girlfriend who was from London. We'd done all the cool shopping places like the Mall and the newly opened Chapelfield, but I told her there was this other shopping centre called Anglia Square where I used to come as a child. So we went wandering around trying to find it, and when we got there I was a little disappointed to find it was just discount shops, and she said to me, "Is that it? Just cheap shops? That's nothing special, is it?" She was not amused. And ever since then, the melancholy has really stuck with me, and I've gained this kind of fondness for the place. Probably more of a nostalgia than anything, but I like to imagine what it would have been like during its heyday. Luckily, thanks to the memories shared in this film, we have an insight into what it was like, and why it's meant so much to everybody associated with it. But most importantly, this film serves as proof that the place known as Anglia Square ever existed at all. Thanks for watching. Now for the obligatory closing paragraph. If you enjoy my quirky, if slightly self-indulgent adventures, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.